Ladies and gentlemen, good evening and welcome to the inaugural collaboration between Tapster and Lakewood Bottle Shop. My name is John. I'm the owner of Lakewood Bottle Shop. And yeah, tonight we've got four wines for you. And so if you're looking for a little bit of extra, explanation and detail about these things beyond what's there on the printed page, this is what this is all about, kind of a virtual tasting, if you will. I offer tastings every Saturday night, which you would go on Instagram at Liquid Bottle Shop to find out all the details about that. But while that's all pending, this is just a chance for you to get a little bit more deeper dive into these if you want to sit and explore what's going on with these wines. I collaborated with Jordan over at Tapster to try to provide provide further highlight various wines that are perhaps a little more under the radar, but still very delicious. Everything we're going to be sampling tonight retails for around $20. So just trying to find some delicious value wines, and that's really what we're all about here. So you've got four wines in front of you. I have the exact same four wines in front of me. So I'm just going to kind of taste through them and talk about, what I'm experiencing with them and see if that's of any, help or elucidation to you all. So thanks so much for being here. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. So wine number one, we have the Anjou Blanc from Mary Taylor. So this woman down here, she's doing some fun stuff. She's basically traveling around the globe, a lot really in Europe primarily, and she's trying to find wines that are expressive and indicative of those particular regions. So she works with very specific winemakers in every region. So she's not making wine herself, although this one is made by Pascal Biotto from the Loire Valley. And so the grape here is Chenin Blanc. So that's first what we'll jump into. You said you've got little flavor notes written down there on the sheet that you can reference. But in addition to all that, like I said, I'm just going to provide some bonus trivia here and, tasting notes. But so Anjou Blanc, I mean, let's talk about that quickly, where, European wine labels are not largely, honestly, almost exclusively labeled geographically rather than varietally. So they're more concerned with where it's from rather than what it's made of. Whereas in the United States, South America, Australia, you'll almost always see a grape. So if you're buying wine from California, it's going to say this is Merlot, it's Cabernet, it's Pinot Noir, it's Chardonnay, whatever it happens to be. Stuff out of Europe, though, on the other hand, very often just lists a place of designation. However, those places of designation actually have laws that stipulate what can be grown and honestly how it can be grown and even aged in some cases for those regions. So it's honestly a big part, I would say, of why guys like me, people like me have jobs and sommeliers, how we sort of strut our stuff is because it's just a lot of sort of memorizing of in this region, they're allowed to grow this particular thing. So when you look at this, it says Anjou Blanc. Anjou is a region in the Loire Valley in central France. But if you do your studies, you know that Anjou Blanc must always be Chenin Blanc. So the grape here is Chenin Blanc, Chenin Blanc. It's 100%. And that grape tends to be sort of, crisp, fruity, bright, high acid. And let's check it out. So first thing, the color is kind of cool. It's pretty golden. I'm not sure what the light's going to look like there in Tapster, but this has a bit more color saturation to it than a lot of white varietals. A lot of times they'll be sort of much more pale, clear, transparent, almost like watery thin. This really has a certain golden hue to it, which is not atypical for Chenin Blanc. When you do the sommelier exam, there's a blind tasting component, and color actually plays a pretty big role in that from time to time. But on the nose, as we get there, sort of as written on that sheet, I mean, just all the pomaceous fruit. It's very appley, apple, pear. It's funny, it's Anjou Blanc. It's almost like an Anjou pear kind of thing. But to me, it reminds me of just like standing in a cidery. There's almost something like, for lack of a better word, Angry Orchard cider about this. You can just smell, it's super appley, right? Almost like Mott's applesauce. It almost gets to that level. But combined with almost like a sort of like wet river rock, kind of slaty minerality that's going on too, which I think is very cool. But typically these are, very bright, crisp, high acid whites. And let's see if this fits the bill. I'm going to cover the mic during the spits. I found in an earlier take that that can be quite aggressive. But I mean, super par for the course here. Again, it's like Granny Smith, Fuji, Honeycrisp apple kind of stuff. No ocherly to speak of, so that fruit is very much intact. It's what we call primary fruited, like it's sort of lemon zest, maybe a touch of stone fruit, like very underripe peach or nectarine. Um, but yeah, you notice the acidity. I mean, it's very racy. It's very bright. Leaves your mouth watering for the next sip. It's very fun. I mean, it's very pleasant. It's kind of got the acidity and structure of a Sauvignon Blanc, but doesn't have the same aromatic intensity. Sauvignon Blanc to me can be a very polarizing grape because if you like that grassy sort of herbal component that that grape provides, you love it. But some people really don't care for it. So it's kind of a love it or hate it grape. Whereas this to me has exhibits far more chill. It's just kind of hanging out. It's very friendly. Definitely like a patio pounder as things start warming up. You can drink it solo or before dinner, or even with some like light seafood, flaky white fish. I think this would be excellent. Yeah, so that's the Mary Taylor Anjou Blanc, retails for $17. Heading into wine number 2, this is Abazia di Novacella. This is their Pinot Grigio. I was very excited to showcase this wine because Pinot Grigio, I think, well, it gets a bit of a bad rap. And honestly, not unjustifiably. I think a vast majority of Pinot Grigio that's produced out of Italy, a lot of it's coming from central Italy. So like, if it's long, or whatever the boot and the length, say it's about this long, it's a rectangle. That's a very crude, I apologize to all Italians. Let's say it's about this big and long, and you got the little boot situation down here. A lot of it's coming from right in here, Tuscany, Umbria, that sort of stuff. And those wines to me can be pretty one-dimensional, not a whole lot going on. Kind of medium acid, medium body, like light, same thing, maybe a touch of, apple citrus, that sort of thing. But this one is from the very north, Alto Adige, and the cooler climate there and a bit of elevation and like it's getting mountainous basically, right? You're basically you head 10 miles north, you're in Austria. So basically you're getting up into the Alps there. And what that means is the grapes hang for a little bit longer on the vine. You get slower flavor development, and then very often they'll do like a bit of lees aging as well, which provides just a bit of like texture and richness to the wine. So when we start to smell this guy, you'll notice after one, it's probably got a similarly intense nose, I would say, but not as overtly fruity, right? Like there is still some fruit. It's kind of melony, like cantaloupe, honeydew kind of thing. But there's something else going on. There's something a little like banana-y, almost like banana runts. These sort of like esters that are providing something, and almost something a little toasty about it, which we'll get to in just a second. Let's give it a taste. Yeah, I like that wine very much. And what's going on here is actually 10% of this wine was barrel fermented. So it does see a bit of oak, but it's not like heavy-handed with the oak usage like a lot of California Chardonnays can be that come off buttery, really rich in vanilla. There's just something a little toasty about it. I get sort of like almost like a marzipan, sort of like an oily, like almond kind of thing, along with some of the fruit. And that's pretty typical. Like when you're going to throw white wine, if you're going to do a bit of oak aging or oak fermentation, you're going to gain some texture and richness, but you're going to lose a little bit of that fruit. So it's kind of a trade-off. But again, it just sort of depends on what's your context and what are you trying to do. What I will note about this is I think an interesting study is with these two whites is in body. So I just want to take a second to unpack that word for you guys. So like, people talk about, I like a full-bodied wine. And I think this is honestly one of the most like misdeployed words in the wine vocabulary by people, where when they say full-bodied, what they're really saying that they want is like a high-intensity wine. They want a wine with a lot of flavor, something that really jumps out of the glass and grabs you. And while many full-bodied wines are high intensity, they're not exactly the same thing. So what I encourage you to think about, body for the wine professionals really is relegated to what is the texture or viscosity of the wine. So with these two wines, especially after tasting two, like go back and sip one, give it a little swirl and a smell and a taste. But move that around on your palate and feel like, what is the weight? What is the viscosity? Like if you're thinking about light, medium, full-bodied, think about skim 2% whole milk. All right. So like same product across the board, but skim milk, as you can imagine or know from experience, it's kind of like watery thin, whereas whole milk definitely has this like creaminess to it, right? So feel the weight on wine number one. Go ahead, like I said, swish that and do that, and then swish two and see if you can feel a difference. Yeah. If you'd like to take a moment now, pause the video and discuss, see what you guys think. But to me, yeah, it's fairly obvious that like one is much more like skim to 1% milk, and like wine number two is more like 2% to whole, right? There's definitely this like richness, this creaminess, which again comes from that extended hang time, lees, and again, in this case, most prominently like a little bit of oak. And that's cool because like it's just that texture. Like, what are you into? Neither one is better than the other. It's just a matter of like, what's your preference and how are you using the wine? So again, wine number one to me is a bit more patio pounder, like just hanging out, sipping solo. Two's got a little bit more complexity, depth, nuance to it, and that additional texture. Really, like, I don't know, I just think about this with like roast chicken or something like that. Like, because where you've got enough weight to this that'll handle some like meat and protein, like, you know, crispy skin or like a fatty chicken thigh. It's going to be super cleansing and bright because there's still plenty of acid in this wine as well. But it's somewhat less apparent because of that oak integration, right? So wine number one is like, you really feel that raciness and that zippiness, whereas this is like, it's just a bit more like broad and mellow, but like both lovely wines. I'd say one, perhaps two, is like, again, the fruit is a bit more aromatically intense, and then two, you've got a similar aromatic intensity total, like overall writ large, but you've just got other varying notes, right? Again, see those kind of toasty, almost like yogurty kind of thing going on, which is very fun. So it's just a matter of like, yeah, what do you like? Do you want the pure fruit of number one, or something that's seen a little bit more, you know, oak integration and, you know, complexity and depth behind it? Man, there's no right or wrong answer. It's just, you know, what do you prefer? So those are the first two. This one retails for $25 here at Lakewood Bottle Shop. So now let's move into the two reds. And again, not sure how great the lighting is there at Tapster. From what I've seen, seems a little necessarily like the brightest, and that's not a problem. But just, I think you can see even here in these glasses, like not all red wine is created equal, especially by sight. So in that blind tasting exam I referenced before for you know, taking a wine test, we have a blind tasting component, and again, so much is about color. And yeah, wine number one is obviously clearly far more transparent, right? I'd call this like, it's like a ruby orange with like tinge of bricking. It's almost like, yeah, getting a little garnet at the rim. And wine number two, on the other hand, is far more purple, dark, dense, opaque, right? So opacity and color saturation are very cool, where if you drink enough and experience enough stuff, you start to get a vibe for like, okay, some grapes basically are more like purple, dense, dark, brooding, and some are more sort of bright, tart, red, refreshing. All right. So wine number one is a thin-skinned varietal, hence the color, Xinomavro. This is from northern Greece, mainland Greece, up near Macedonia. And yeah, to me, this is kind of like a Pinot Noir analog. It's very bright and red and tart. This is a lot of times what Pinot Noir is going to look like, a bit more ruby in color, less purple. But yeah, I like this wine. Again, it's very, let's see what we got going here. I mean, super red fruited along with the color. It's cherry and raspberry, but it's a little slightly cooked and desiccated. There's a very like leathery kind of savory thing going on to it as well. Maybe a touch of like orange zest and baking spice, a touch of clove. I'm almost thinking of like how you finish an old fashioned sometimes with like a, you know, like the orange zest express, and if you had, or like a clove studded orange zest kind of thing is sort of a vibe I'm getting here. Let's taste. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a fun wine because it's fairly rich and ripe on the palate, but then all that acidity comes through. Like, you notice how you swallow that, your mouth is just watering. I mean, if I'm not actively swallowing here as I'm talking, I would just drool out the front of my mouth. It's great. It's like, this is what I definitely call like a white wine drinker's red wine, because a lot of red wine, I think what most people understand as red wine, especially at like a value price point, is a bit more, yeah, just oaky, a bit more toasty, what they're using like chips or powder, just integrating a bit more of that woodiness, which is people often associate with quality, but it doesn't always have to be the case. And yeah, this is just super bright and refreshing. I think it's a very cool like springtime summer red. Yeah, and super mouth-watering and fresh. So for some of you that prefer white wine and don't often like red wine, I wouldn't be surprised if this is one that you're actually going to resonate with a little bit. And then we go to number 2, red wine number 2, which is the Elderton E-Series Shiraz. And so, yeah, I'll unpack that just a tiny bit here. So Shiraz and Syrah, the exact same grape, genetically speaking. It's just a nomenclature issue based on where it's from. In France, they call it Syrah. Actually, everywhere but Australia, they call it Syrah. So we call it Syrah in Washington and California. Anything from South America, if they had it South Africa, it's going to be Syrah. But the Aussies down under, they're going to call it Shiraz for whatever reason. I should probably have an answer for that. But that's where they went. But when you give a smell on that, I mean, it's night and day from number 1, right? You can smell how sort of dark and rich and brooding this is. So if this was all red fruit, kind of cherry, raspberry, this gets into much more like, if it's black cherry, it's brambly, it's kind of like Marionberry. Yeah, super like bramble fruit. And you're going to get a bit more of that oak integration in here as well now. Like there's a little like vanilla, almost cherry cola thing kind of going on, which is cool. And yeah, so we're here. And 1 second, guys. I'm just going to pause you. We got a customer in. And we are back. Sorry about that. Customers first. You know how we do. It's probably going to be a little incongruous. I honestly forgot where I was. Had a decent chat with the fellow. But yeah, Aussie Shiraz. Richer, riper, denser, cherry cola, vanilla. Oh yeah, let's taste it. I don't think I've had this in I don't think we've tasted this yet. So again, back to body. And you can feel it, right? Immediately that like weight on the palate. And oak, once again, a nice, interesting demonstration of oak here. Like you can taste that charred, sort of caramely, toasted marshmallow kind of thing going on in this wine. Far more oak integration in this, because the inside of all the oak barrels are actually like burned, charred black, literally with fire. The inside of the barrels are, which is, not a lot of people, not everybody knows that, I guess. So it's interesting to know that. So the barrels will always add those sort of like toasty elements. And but what I like about this wine is like it's rich, it's densey, it's juicy. This is something we might call like jammy, if that's a word you've heard, or like the fruit is very opulent, ripe, rich. But I like it's still got enough acidity to sort of, bolster and like enliven the entire wine, like keep it bright and keep it from being too like dense and saturating on the palate. Boom. But yeah, that's about it. Sorry, I think my through line kind of got displaced there, but we're going to have to roll with it because this video is due tomorrow. And I'm running out of time. So the Xinomavro, this one is $22 for that light-bodied, fresh red, and then the Elderton Shiraz will be $20. So yeah, 17, 25, 20, 20, 17, 25, 22, 20. Wines number 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are available at Lakewood Bottle Shop. And as you'll see there, in promotion with this event, and for those of you that attended the tasting at Tapster, if you hold on to that descriptor sheet, that handout, that basically doubles as a coupon here. If you bring that on in, you get 10% of any purchase here at Lakewood Bottle Shop, which again is right here in the heart of Lakewood on Detroit Avenue. My name is John. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I hope it provided some, information and elucidation. And again, if you like this style of stuff and tasting alongside a professional, I do offer tastings every Saturday at 5 p.m. And they said you get on Instagram at Lakewood Bottle Shop to check those out. There will be a schedule. You do have to book in advance because they are limited to 10 seats. Anyways, that's it. I hope you guys enjoyed. For any other questions, you know where to find me. 16300 Detroit Avenue. Cheers.